Hello and welcome to today's Heartlift with Janelle and my very special guest, Marilyn Bansell today. I am so happy to have you here, Marilyn. Thank you for saying yes.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. It wasn't hard to say yes.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love it. I love that you're a spiritual director, of course, first and foremost. I find myself moving towards that from therapy, counseling, coaching into spiritual direction as I have spent the last 13 years really seeing that's really what people are really yearning for, right? Yeah. I'm going to ask you from the get-go, how did you get into that? What led you there on your journey to spiritual direction?
Great idea. Great question. Well, I was formed mostly spiritually through an evangelical organization, and my husband was on staff with Young Life. I'll name it.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
A great life, but there's not a but there, always recognized, or I always wondered about something missing, something isn't getting expressed in me. And someone invited me to participate in the Ignition exercises for a year.
Ooh.
And it was the first time they provided a spiritual director. And I actually am going to do it again this fall.
Ooh.
Because this was, not a long time ago, but a while ago that I did it the first time, but that was the first time I had a spiritual director. But the thing that stuck with me in that is every Saturday we'd gather and they would do these presentations that were very embodied and very symbolic and set up so beautifully. And I would cry through the whole, every time. I would just cry. And I thought,
remember that myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this? It's so amazing.
Yeah. And it woke
Tell
up.
me why you cried. Tell me. I'd love to know.
Well, it was just waking up a part of me that I didn't know that there was this longing for a more contemplative, a more free, a more expansive expression of my spirituality, of Jesus, of God. I mean, it was like, I've been missing this. And didn't
even know I missed it. Didn't even know I needed it. Didn't even know it existed. Right.
Exactly.
But your spirit did.
Yes.
Your spirit did.
There'd always been something trying to express itself. And so that began a journey. And it was through a God-directed series of events. I already knew the Enneagram.
Okay.
Because that's been for a long time.
And how did you get introduced to the Enneagram? So your two journeys are spiritual director.
Yes.
I mean, there are many other journeys, but the two professional, or we say vocational, and an Enneagram expert. So I know that my community has heard me talk about this Enneagram. And I love from the very beginning, you actually go, what is that? Spell it. What the world is Enneagram? Enneagram. What is the Enneagram? I know I have several in my life that are just opposed to it because I feel like it just boxes people in. But for me, it has been such a life changer because it gets to the motives. But tell me, all of us here in the Heartlift community, your journey, how you found the Enneagram, and perhaps give us just a primer. Quick. What it is, because your first book is more of an introduction, but today we're talking about your second. Is this your second book?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Beyond the Enneagram. So we want to talk about that today. So
great. Yeah. Well, I, back in my late 30s, which was more than that ago.
Yes, I'm with you.
Someone gave my husband actually a set of cassette tapes by Richard Rohr. And I didn't know Richard Rohr. And it had this weird picture on the front, with all the circle arrows. It has
this weird symbol that looks very new age, very,
And it
very
was, and the title was Naming Your Illusions. Well, that didn't fit into my evangelical, my box. And it was during that time, everybody was about new age. And so I wasn't interested at all, but Jeff listened to him just because this friend gave them to him. And then he said, I really think you'd like these. It's on a boom box on a cassette tape, back in the day.
Back in the day, man. Had little Walkmans. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank God for them, though. Oh, my gosh. Those cassette tapes. Yes.
Yes. We had those available. And And so it was so helpful. And I identify with type 9. So of course I had to listen all the way through going, that's not me. No, that's not me. That's not me. Not everybody
Wow.
is so clear in the beginning, but Jeff was very clear about his
And what was
type.
he?
3. He
Okay.
identifies with the pattern of a 3. And I identify with the pattern of a 9. And
I like the way you say that. I really like the way you say that.
And well, let me caveat to that, because it's really important to recognize. That's why people say this puts me in a box.
Mm-hmm.
And it can, and that's kind of what I started addressing in Beyond the Enneagram book, is that it's become a box. And it really is, each of the 9 types are descriptions of a pattern that we tend to react in, behave in, believe, beliefs, and that each of the types is a pattern, and it's a description.
It's a pattern. It's beautiful.
It's not a definition. It's a description.
Not a trap. It's not a box. I just love the box image because I'm just going to interject right away, because in the beginning, the introduction of Beyond the Enneagram, can I read this just quickly?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
You write, one of my favorite pieces of jewelry is a silver spiral shaped pendant my dear friend Julie gave me upon her return from a trip to Ireland. And I told you before we started, I put mine on. And once you see the video, guys, you'll be able to see that my daughter Candace, after a trip to New Zealand, gave me this beautiful symbol. And it is also a spiral shaped. But it's from New Zealand. I wear it often, you write, as a necklace, particularly when I'm meeting with someone for spiritual direction or speaking at workshops and retreats. We are so kindred. I love this pendant, not only because it reminds me of my special friendship with Julie, but also because of what the shape symbolizes. In the Celtic tradition, this single spiral represents growth, expansion, and the flow of life, both inwardly and outwardly. I view it as a beautiful and fitting depiction of the spiritual journey toward a more centered life with God. The movement, that's what it is. That's why boxes don't allow movement.
Oh, I love that, Janelle.
They don't, though, do they? They don't. They trap us. The movement from the outer ego to the interior space of the soul, where intimacy with God is enjoyed, and the movement outward to express God's love in the world and to serve others. This captures what I long to experience more deeply and consistently for myself and for those I meet with and guide. And I know today you are hoping that for our community.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking about that, Janelle, as I was praying for this time, and I thought, what is my bottom line passion message that I just want people to live into is freedom to be their authentic selves as God created them, and to be free from all the things, speaking of boxes, those can be the lies that we believed, that people have told us, that false narratives that we play over and over. Those are boxes.
Yeah.
And we need to get out of the box and have a movement to greater and greater freedom.
I love it. I love the whole emphasis. You say it over and over again, just movement, interior movement, so that we can have outward expression. That's it. If we don't walk away with anything else, because I think, like yourself, you've already identified that you didn't know what you were longing for. And I think that is so many of us, particularly those of us who are moving into the elder state in our 60s and older, my matriarchal stage, I like to say. I love it. I feel like I've finally come home. I am maybe not loving all of the physical parts of this aging process, but I'm loving the wisdom parts of the process, and the emotional health and the wisdom. And I think so many of us are just starving because there's this pearly ache inside, it's just this ache.
Yes.
And you're helping us. You are guiding us to move to the interior in this book. Okay. So you got out of your box
Mm-hmm.
And then where did the Enneagram, how did it grab hold of you so that it's now been a 30-year journey in your life
Right.
of
Yes.
teaching and using it in spiritual
Yes.
direction and using it in
Yes.
your own life? Yeah.
Yes.
How did?
Well, it just, when after I listened to those tapes, it was I cried because I felt known. As a type 9 to feel
Ooh.
known and seen and understood, because I just felt like I was sort of,
Ooh.
what everybody else was, but I didn't really know myself. And the
No.
sentence that captured me, and I don't know what book it was in, because I, had to hunt for books at that season.
At that point, for
At
sure.
that point in time, was that type 9s have a vague sense of themselves. And it was like, yes, I do. And so that was, so I used the Enneagram personally. And then with our marriage, it was like, well, of course we keep running up against these same things. And that he is never going to be like me and I'm never going to be like him, but we can appreciate the gift of each type and kind of put it out on the table as, oh, that's my 9 pattern running up against your 3 pattern. Not,
I can't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a social, if you know the subtype,
Subtypes.
People don't all
right.
The subtypes. He's a social 3. So he's a 3 out there.
Changing the world.
Still that 1-to-1. I'm a 1-to-1. So I just want that. And so when I'm just part of the tribe for him, then I feel really, hurt.
Vague. And vague. And where am I? Who am I? You don't feel seen, heard, known, loved, and where you belong. I love that. I love that it made you feel that that's what it made you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because our Heartlifters know all about secure attachment and the attachment theory. And we know that we have to be seen, heard, known, loved, and we have to have a strong sense of belonging. And if we haven't gotten that I did not get that in my childhood. Many of us who tune in here did not. That's why we tune in here, because we want to earn our secure attachment. We want to be secure and not have just a vague understanding of ourselves. I wonder, because you have this incredible illustration that you coined, the drawing. Yes. I'm hopping forward just a little bit, but I think it just fits right here because it took my breath away. And I am always looking for more clarity in my own life, but clarity to bring to others as a teacher to understand themselves so that they're not vague.
Right.
And I believe, you tell me if you would agree or you disagree and correct me and add to my expansion of knowledge. We're vague first because maybe we were born into a childhood of vagueness or dysfunction or trauma or imperfection. We all are.
Yeah, that's imperfection is all of it.
Everywhere. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But many people have had more secure attachment in their early years through it all. And I think that can add to a vague sense of self because we start adapting, right?
Yep. The adapted self.
You call it the adapted self, which I am now absolutely shifting when I go from true self, false self. How many ways do we say that? Essence, my learned personality, but I love the way that I adapted. Okay. So that's part of your drawing. So tell us where this drawing came from and how you came about.
Yeah. So it started with when I was writing the first book, Self to Lose, Self to Find, which is more on the Enneagram and the 9 patterns and the basics. And I realized that the traditional Enneagram teaching includes the head, heart, and gut centers of who we are. We all have a heart center, a gut center, a hip center. I thought, but we have a spiritual center.
We do. I know.
There's that other dimension of us that's not limited to just our thinking and our feeling and our bodies and our doing. And I thought, that's missing here in a symbol that is often talked about as a spiritual symbol, but there's no spirit.
That's so true. Until you brought it to the forefront. I'm like, yeah.
And so I introduced the idea that putting the spirit, our spiritual center, in the middle of that space And that when we are closer to the center and more centered in our spiritual life with God, we actually can be equidistant from all the 9 types. Therefore, you're not in a box. You are a wider, you can, because for me as a 9, I'm not just wired as a peaceful person, which I really am, but I also express love. I express power. I express wisdom, all of the other authentic
affirmation, all of,
yeah, all of it. And not just, I'm just the peaceful person. That's me.
That's right. I love that. I love that you say that, because I've always said, and I know I was taught this somewhere, I can't remember who the source is, but we are, our purpose, our growth is to become all, to encompass all, embody all 9.
9, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
To be wholehearted is to encompass all 9
I love
of
that
the
word, wholehearted.
areas,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And if we're, the Enneagram symbol, if we're stuck in just our type structure, the ego structure, we've adapted. I mean, it's how we're wired, but then we've turned it into this is how I have to be. Then we're really stuck. We're not free. And so part of the journey movement, as you say, moving toward the center, is to release and that adapted self and become more fully our authentic self as God created us. And that's what I thought. I want to create a drawing, some kind of picture. I didn't call it a drawing at first. Some kind of picture, illustration of that movement toward the middle, toward the center. And then as I was, it took a while. I had the idea of moving from the outer circle to the inner.
Yeah.
But it took a while to develop. And then I struggled with trying to come up with some cute name, or
I do
some
know.
catchy name. And the publisher was also, the drawing, I just called it the drawing.
Drawing. It's what it is.
Because I thought, well, it is a drawing, but it also more deeply illustrates in the drawing of God. That God is drawing us always like a magnet toward a more centered life, even if we don't know it.
I think it's your next book, The Drawing. Are you already on the next one? Because I'm telling you,
no.
Tell us how to be drawn. I mean, drawn. Moses was drawn out of the river.
Water.
I mean, drawn, the drawing, that is such a movement to me.
Yeah. And if I think about back to my story and your story and many stories, that part of me that was not awake was God was drawing me. And I had to, and so part of this drawing picture is the question is, which way are you turned? Are you awake? Are you resisting that drawing? Are you living in your ego self, living with all your trauma stories and victim stories and false narratives? Are you turned toward that? Or are you receiving the invitation from God? Come to me. Let me draw you to freedom. Let me draw you to love. I'm drawing you to this more intimate life with God, who is the only one that can satisfy the deepest longings of our heart to belong, be seen, known. I mean, we all know how we look to humans, especially spouses and family members, to do all that for us, which is important. I mean, we need that. Human,
of course, we need to be affirmed. We need to be loved, acknowledged, correct.
And it's where our hurt comes from and our wounds come from when we haven't had that.
Yeah.
But that God ultimately is saying, come to me. Come. I'm drawing you toward a more intimate life with me, a more centered life. So as your true self. So the drawing I'm trying to illustrate the movement from the adapted self messaging,
correct,
and traps to the more freedom of the authentic self.
Do you have that right before you? If not, I do. And I would love for you to just help us understand the outer circle, the adapted self, maybe just even read around it. And even before you do that, one of the other parts of what I was reading is you were clenching your fist a few minutes ago. And you have written about how we hold our fists so tight to those things that we have adapted to. Is that?
Yeah.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
And in the, and I'm so grateful that God gave me those words, because I have heard that the most about my self-deluded, self-defined book is the adapted self, not the false self. Because the adapted self is very true. It's very true. It's very real. It's not just
it's what we do.
False thing. And we as humans, and we have to have compassion for ourselves, that as humans, we had to adapt. Even in the best of circumstances, we were thrown into this world. And we had to figure out, how do I get love? How do I stay safe? How do I have agency? And depending on our environment and our hardwiring, we created a protective self. And we needed a survival self. It's not, well, this will get into tricky language, but it's not just that I'm a sinner. And so,
absolutely. Thank you. Please talk to us, Marilyn. Talk to us. It's okay. We love this territory.
Yes, because we had to adapt, and to have compassion for that adapted child, and to say, oh, in this circumstance, this is a choice I had.
This is what I picked up subconsciously.
Yes. And so it becomes protective. And survival. But then there comes that place where it breaks down. It's no longer working.
No.
And we're trapped in it, in the box. We have to be this way. And our false narratives and all of that just catches us. And so I put on the outer circle where we get trapped is just what I said: protective strategies, our false beliefs, the wounds that we've all experienced, the sins that we've committed, choices we've made. Compulsion is a big one. Like, what are we just have to do this. We have to, you have that energy towards something, and it just, you get trapped there. So these are all traps. Avoid it. What do we avoid? Our fears. Wow. That's a big one for everybody. And our perceptions. That's the other thing too, is we perceived things that, I think about as a parent myself and our 4 children. Sometimes they say things that I did or said, and they perceived it a whole different way. I meant it, but their perception is real.
You must come back to us and talk about this adult children segment.
Oh gosh, that's a whole new me.
It is, because as a parent of adult children is so difficult, because you do hear the narrative of their childhood. And if I have 3 children, it seems all 3 have different perspectives or perceptions. And you think, it's the old adage, you can ask 5 kids, it sounds like they all had different parents. But it can be maddening. But it's also where I feel like the Enneagram understanding where they, landed. Exactly.
And how they heard it. Yeah.
If I had known how to parent an Enneagram 8 or a parent an Enneagram 2 or 1 or whoever, it just would have been such a different outcome. So I'm so happy that you said that. Okay. So perception and
we get
perception's everything. We do.
And we're creating a story. When we perceive something, we're creating a story that isn't necessarily true.
Absolutely.
But we think it's true. My mom did this, but it's the way it was, so we
think it's true.
We think, it is true in our thinking.
Yes. To us, it is true.
Yes.
So it takes a big person. It takes a big mama. It takes a big, evolving, growing, committed to spiritual health and emotional health and mental health mama or parent to be able to say to someone, or to your child particularly, I know that's your truth.
Right.
Can we share? Let me share my truth, and let's somehow find a way to meet in the middle. So that right there is a beautiful takeaway for everyone in relationships in general, but particularly as your children are growing and becoming adult children. It is one of the toughest stages of parenting for me, because
it still is for me.
Oh, for sure. It just is so personal. It just, I have to, that's my defense mechanism is personalization. And that's where I adapted as a child. And so now I'm like, okay, don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. Okay. Excellent. So thank you, Marilyn, for your wisdom.
Yeah. And deceptions. Oof. So those are ways we've seen things that are deceiving. And then our defenses, how we've locked up, guarded ourselves. And so all of those, they're so real. They're so true. But that's our adapted self. That's how we manage living in this world. Yes. But God, and I put the arrows in there on the drawing, which your people watching this will see, outside of the circle, because there is a life that was created. But I couldn't, create another whole layer.
No, I love it.
It's we start at a different place, and then we move through life, and we create these adapted strategies, and we also hear the next inner circle is all these false beliefs.
Please talk to us. Go ahead and go through it again, because this is not going to be wasted on anyone.
And this is not an exhaustive list. This is just beginning. Yeah. And if you know the Enneagram, they tie into the patterns of the numbers.
I love that you say patterns. I'm going to try to adjust from saying numbers to patterns. I love that. It's more inclusive. It's more interior.
It's movement. And it's a movement. Yeah. And so we have these false beliefs. You're bad. You're not lovable. Ugh. You're not worthy. You're deficient. You're stupid. Oof. You're inadequate. You're not enough. You're too much. And you're nothing.
Oh, those evoke tears right away. They're so hard to hear.
Yeah. And
they're really hard to hear.
And we listen to those old lies that we've told ourselves or that we have heard from others. And I love doing identity exercises to help people identify those. What are the things that you specifically heard? I'm whatever.
Too much.
Too much. Not enough.
Not enough.
And those, think about, those are opposites, but they're still both there. So, and help people just name those and give them to Jesus, and have Jesus give us a new message, which then moves to this authentic self. And I call those lies as the fear voice too, and those are all,
they are fear-based,
and they're accusations. They're the accusing voice. You are this, you're not, you're this, this.
It's the voice of accusation. I love that.
And deception and lies. So,
and the key is to learn what you're training us here in this book as well. It is an invitation, as the subtitle says, to experience a more centered life with God. And so your words, your practices, all the new movements you're giving us to that interior life will help fine tune. I like to say fine tune our inner ear, right? John 10, so that we can hear the voice of the stranger, the accuser of the brethren. We can then recognize the voice of the stranger and know the voice of God.
And the thieves, it's a thief.
Thieves.
They're just trying to steal our true self. Just
all the time, every single day.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're in the authentic self. I love that.
And so then moving toward a more, centered life with God and with yourself and self-knowledge is to listen to the affirming voice. And I don't mean I mean the love voice that says,
voice.
You're worthy. You are worthy. Yeah, I should have put my glasses on.
I can read them if you can't. They're getting smaller.
Well, why don't you read them? You read
okay. Authentic self. You are worthy. Okay, just take a moment, guys. I'm going to, because I was evoked to tears. It's hard to hear the voice of accusation. It's so hard, yet I hear it in my voice, in my mind every day. But when you hear someone else say it over you, it's like, oof. So let's have a little healing here. And I'm going to read these slowly. And I'm going to let you take this like a meditative exercise. Okay, Heartlifter, are you ready? You are worthy. You are beloved. Go ahead and put your hand over your heart. Take it in. Fully embody this. You are valued. You are whole. You are known. Really take that one in. You are known. You are accepted. You are enough. You are. You are enough. You are protected. You are significant because you are loved. I feel better already. Paula D'Arcy writes, "Something's trying to emerge. Let yourself be drawn by a different voice. Something's trying to make its presence known. Imagine not being afraid. Imagine not resisting the greater power. Something is moving, pressing through your circumstances. Imagine how you would grow if you listened." Wow, Heartlifter. I really just wanted to let that play out, but I needed to come back on and just invite you to perhaps listen to those proclamations, those declarations of blessing over you. Play it again and again. Put some headphones on. Man, I am immediately hushed inside. And I created it. I read the words, but it's not even like I did it when I listen back to it, because it doesn't matter. It's just like God himself, the Spirit, is inviting us to imagine how we would grow if we would just listen, receive that love in those words that he speaks over you and over me. Imagine what would happen. A revolution would happen in our lives if we received God's unconditional, unabashed love for each one of us. Marilyn writes in Beyond the Enneagram these powerful words about slowing down. We talk a lot about slowing down here in this community because we know the power that lies in living a slower, unhurried life. We've talked about hushing. We had a whole season on being unhurried. Go back, listen, really take it all in again. Because we know as we do that, as we implement these deeper contemplative practices of silence and stillness and solitude, they bring us home to our center, to our beautiful, authentic self. Inside that power, inside the power of the contemplative practices is the invitation to move from our adaptive selves into our authentic selves. She writes, "Slowing down isn't easy to do in our fast-paced and full lives. We wake up, we do whatever duty requires of us and whatever we choose to do, and then we sleep. Minutes, hours, days, and years pass by, and we wonder, where did the time go? Day after day, we follow the script, often too tired, preoccupied, or oblivious to notice the sacred and significant moments and messages available right in front of us. We press on to get through one thing, only to find ourselves getting through to the next thing. What if we slowed down more often, pausing to notice and savor the extraordinary moments and provisions in our ordinary lives? A child's laughter, a gentle breeze, a delicious meal, a kind cashier, a comfortable bed. What if we walked at the same pace God walked? The speed of love. Marilyn is such a soulmate. I love it so much. In Stronger Every Day, I invite you to saunter, to sit, and to see. To sit on a park bench, to sit on a front porch or back porch, and just saunter and sit and see. Take some mental snapshots. I have that beautiful mini course, Everyday Epiphanies, where we invite gratitude in by just noticing, just like Marilyn's inciting us to do in her book, Beyond the Enneagram. This idea of God's pace comes from a beautiful, beautiful book by Kosuke Kayoma. I know I'm not saying that right. 3 Mile an Hour God. It is a stunning, stunning read. He writes, God walks slowly because he is love. If he is not love, he would have gone much faster. Love has its speed. It is an inner speed. It is a spiritual speed. It is a different kind of speed from the technological speed to which we are accustomed. It is slow. Yet it is Lord over all other speeds, since it is the speed of love. It goes on in the depth of our life, whether we notice it or not, whether we are currently hit by storm or not, at 3 miles an hour. It is the speed we walk, and therefore it is the speed the love of God walks. Wow. That, Heartlifter, is our growth point this week. It is our beautiful journal prompting for this week. We walk, human beings walk, at the speed of 3 miles an hour. That's a known fact. And so in his book, A 3 Mile an Hour God, he brings into the picture that that's just about the speed of love. So I want you to just take all of this in. It's a lot to take in, I understand. And perhaps just allow yourself over these next few days before we listen to part 2 to be drawn closer to God's love. To be drawn. To be drawn is to come to arrive at a point in time or a specified point in a process. It is to be gently pulled or guided by someone in a specific direction. Heartlifter, may you be drawn closer to the speed of love this week. And stay tuned to the rest of my conversation with Marilyn Vancil, spiritual director and author of Beyond the Enneagram, an invitation to experience a more illustration, the drawing, in our show notes so that you can access it and have it in front of you when you are listening. It's very helpful to see it, of course, and it will be up on YouTube when that video gets uploaded. Until then, meet me over on Instagram. That's our connection point right now. I will put Marilyn's Instagram as well in our show notes. So at Janelle Rardon, JANELLRARDON. And if you are not subscribed to my biweekly newsletter and to the podcast, please do so. And you can do that on my website, JanelleRardon.com. See you next time.
Thanks for listening today. It was great having you here. For even more great content and resources, please join the Stronger Everyday online community at JanelleRardon.com. Always remember, you, my friend, have value, worth, and dignity.